One last time. This was the first dedicated space that I really have had to make music in. And in order to avoid this becoming just a complete sentimental sob fest, which I'll get to later, I thought I'd just talk about what I've learned since I've built this space here in my attic and things that I would do differently, things that I'm going to be thinking about as I move to a new space, and just general concepts and ideas that have helped me make a lot of music while I've been here. I think one of the simultaneously most valuable and annoying traits that I possess is a love of almost ritualistic routine. And the most difficult thing when I got into recording and production and making my own music and releasing it out into the world was that every time that I would go to do anything, any step of the process, I was having to learn how to do that. And that would take me completely out of the creative headspace that I was in, and I would get sidetracked off on some other tangent. And it took a long time to develop sort of the muscle memory and the systems with the technology to be able to kind of get into the flow state and stay there for an extended period. As I alluded to, this is probably the last video you're going to see from this space. In a few weeks, I'll be moving, which means I'll be packing all of this stuff up and taking it to what will, at least temporarily, be a smaller space. This place has been incredible. It's the first time I've had a dedicated place to kind of expand and actually, over the last 8 years, slowly accumulate all of these synthesizers and all of this gear that I love to use. And I've made a tremendous amount of music up here that I'm really proud of and really happy with and means a lot to me. But in my new house, I'm going to be relegated to a small spare bedroom once again, which is where I got my start, actually. And that'll be a temporary setup while I hopefully get the chance to build a studio, a dedicated studio in the backyard, which I've always wanted to do. And I think that's going to happen in the new place. We certainly have the space for it. So a lot of this stuff is going to have to go in storage for a while. I am not going to have room for everything that's in here in the new studio. And while that makes me kind of sad, it also makes me kind of excited to be able to strip things down and decide what I actually use and what I actually want to have at the ready all the time, and kind of figure out new systems that are maybe more efficient. Because one thing that you know, if you have some hardware in your studio, it actually kind of makes the process more complicated. So as much as I dread the process of actually boxing everything up and moving it, I'm kind of looking forward to the opportunity to reevaluate my systems and see if I can streamline them a bit and get to the fun part of the creative process more directly, much faster. Now, if you're an obsessive compulsive routine freak like me, then probably chaos and disorder is not the most conducive thing to your creativity. I get easily overwhelmed, overstimulated, and if you ask my wife, pretty grumpy when things aren't the way I like for them to be in terms of disrupting my routine. It's a problem, and I'm working on it. But I think it's just a personality type, and I think there are probably a lot of creatives who can identify with that. I heard Bryan Cranston say in an interview something along the lines of, you need to be ordered in your life, in your systems, so that you can be chaotic in your art. And that sums it up perfectly for me. Now, in my studio, that has translated to having the things that I love the most at the ready that I can get to easily and quickly. It's also why I've drastically slowed down on buying new stuff. I don't review stuff anymore because I didn't like the constant change that was happening in my studio. It made it difficult for me to write because I was always swapping stuff out and feeling like I had to try new things. And when I was doing those more gear-centric, gear review, gear-related videos, it was really hard to stay in that creative flow because I had pretty much everything disconnected so that I could quickly grab something, throw it on the review table, which is where I just was, and just play around with that thing and show what it could do. And that was great for ReviewTube, but it was not great for music making. It was very frustrating that I would have to set everything up every time I wanted to make something. So I found myself making less music during that time as a direct result, and it's a big reason why I don't do that anymore. The compromise that I've kind of found is having certain stations around the studio, like here at my main desk. I just have everything wired up all the time so that I can bring whatever synth that I want to put right here in front of me and have it featured and use that, to make a whole track or something. I still have the rack over here where I have on my patch bay, instead of, Muse on channel whatever, I have synth rack tier 2. So I could swap out synths and put it there, and everything is wired up and ready to go. I just have to switch out the power supply. And this has been a really good combination, or way of combining flexibility, to some degree at least, with the consistency that I need to work more quickly. And that leads me to my next point. Hardware can really suck sometimes. 6 or 7 years ago, I looked around at this mostly empty space, and I would watch videos like all of you do and be like, if I just had this and if I just had that, then I could really make all the stuff that I want to make. But I was still making music back then, and in a lot of cases I felt like the barrier to entry for actually getting started with making music was a lot easier. I do love the tactile feeling of using hardware, and to my ears, it may just be placebo, I don't know. Some of it does sound a little better to me, but there are also side effects that come along with using a lot of hardware that a lot of people don't seem to address all that often. When I just had Cubase and that MIDI controller back there, I didn't even know what clock jitter was. That wasn't a thing that entered into my vocabulary. I didn't have to address it. Latency wasn't a huge issue. Everything was pretty much in the box for me, outside of a few live instruments like my piano that I would record. I never had to stop and troubleshoot routings for hours, only to find that there was one faulty TRS cable that I would have to climb behind my desk and replace. I never ran out of cables or adapters that a specific piece of gear needed to incorporate it with my workflow, and then would have to wait days in the mail for it to arrive before I could do anything else. These all are fairly minor problems in the grand scheme of things, but they add up, and if you've ever encountered one of them in the middle of workflow, you know that they can be a complete disruption to the creative flow that you're in. The main message here is just get started with what you have. And no matter what workflow that you have, you need some kind of system that makes it as easy as possible for you to get started working. Because once you get started working, then you can start to enjoy the fun part of the process, which is moving parts around, experimenting, all of those things that I think most of us really enjoy. To be completely honest with you, this video is a bit of an excuse for me to just say goodbye to this space and document this attic that I love so much. So I appreciate you allowing me to be a little sentimental and self-indulgent in that way. I've made so much music up here in the last 7.5, 8 years, and started this channel right here, and actually started trying on this channel a couple years ago from that table right back there. I really appreciate those of you who have joined me in just watching the things that I make up here. It means so much, and to see the way the channel has grown in the last couple years, I'm truly thankful for each and every one of you. This is not the end of the channel by any stretch of the imagination. I still feel like we're just getting started and hitting our stride. But it is definitely the close of a very important first chapter, and I just really appreciate all of you for coming along on the ride. So, as always, I'll see you in the next one, even if it's from a slightly more cozy space.